Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Janchik, Director of Open Source Initiatives at Mirantis. In the next hour, we'll be hearing from business and engineering leadership from Mirantis and Amazy.io, now joined together with a powerful shared vision for how cloud can be made much, much easier for software developers. Before we begin, a little housekeeping. The GoToWebinar platform provides attendees with a panel into which questions can be typed. Please use this. We're eager to answer questions and should have a little time to do so after speakers have finished their remarks. Please also note a recording of this webinar will be emailed to all registered attendees in the next few days. Speaking today will be Adrian Ionel, co-founder and CEO of Mirantis, Franz Karlsberger, CEO of Amazy.io, Michael Schmidt, CTO of Amazy.io, and Sergey Lukyanov, Director of Engineering at Mirantis. Now, without further ado, I turn the floor over to Adrian Ionel.
John, thank you very much. Such an exciting day. Hello, everyone. I'm going to keep this short and then pass it on to really the key people in this conversation, who are Franz, Michael, and Sergey, who are doing the heavy lifting here. I want to share with you a few things up front. One is why we did what we did, why we came together with Amazy.io, why we feel this is super exciting for our users and customers, and where do we want to take the story forward. So let's start with the why. The purpose of Mirantis is very simple, and to me and for most of our colleagues, it always comes back to what is our purpose? Why are we here? And our purpose is to help our customers and our users create extraordinary products and services, software-driven products and services that are truly compelling and that can win in the marketplace. And in our view, our unique way of making that happen, of helping our customers create these extraordinary products and services, is to free them from all the activities and all the hassle and all the work that really is not contributing directly to that creation process. And therefore, to free up time and to free up energy for our customers and for our users to spend that time and energy on what's really going to make a difference, on what matters most, right? Which is to be creative, to create unique code, to figure out their own differentiation and their own value for their own users and customers. And everything else we want to remove from their plate and deliver as a service. And we call that, in very simple terms, zero ops. Now, we have done that, and we're doing this successfully at scale across 700 customers today, mostly at the infrastructure level for container platforms, container as a service, and for virtualization, and for those two things combined, if you can think of it as Kubernetes as a service on any cloud, anywhere. However, or I should say, and there is an additional challenge that most of our customers and users are encountering. And that challenge is, how do I write applications for this new cloud-native Kubernetes-based world? And how do I write these applications without having to bother or go super deep into understanding Kubernetes, understanding infrastructure, and learning and managing all the plumbing underneath that does not contribute directly to creating unique value for the users? And we call this application delivery. So we've always been super interested to figure out how we can help our customers build apps and deploy apps and run apps in the easiest possible way on top of cloud native infrastructure, on top of hyperscalers or top of on-prem clouds or both. And we believe that Amazy.io has the best possible answer for that. Why? Because it is truly zero ops, built by developers for developers, because it is infrastructure agnostic. It works on any Kubernetes infrastructure anywhere, on all hyperscalers and on on-prem Kubernetes. And because also it is pure play open source. So you bring those two things together, and this is exactly what our principles are at Mirantis, what we believe. And this immediately creates value for all of our customers. Anybody who's using Mirantis container platform today, Kubernetes, or who's using our infrastructure as a service offering can benefit from Amazy.io and Lagoon. And the final reason why we did this, and maybe one of the most important ones, is because the team is absolutely fantastic. Franz, Michael, their colleagues, the people at the Amazy.io company are just incredible. And they believe in the same things which we believe, starting and first and foremost with this idea that in the end, quality prevails. Quality prevails. And that's what we stand for. If you're looking at the platforms that we run at massive scale for the world's most demanding customers, and that's what Franz and Michael and Amazy.io stand for. So you connect all these dots together, and it's a terrific fit, and we couldn't be more excited about what we are doing here. One maybe closing word before I pass it on as to where we want to take this story. It's very, very simple. In our view, most businesses, most teams should become zero ops businesses, where they do not have to deal with anything else as far as software development is concerned, other than creating their own unique high-value code. And everything else should be provided as a service by a specialist. And we want to be that company that provides the entire software creation and software delivery factory from the infrastructure upwards on any hyperscaler or on-prem as one cohesive story as a service with zero ops. That's where we want to take this. So with that, super happy to have an opportunity to chat with you today, and let me pass it on to Franz, the CEO of Amazy.io, and my colleagues will take it from here. So Franz, it's all yours from here.
Adrian, thank you so much for the warm introduction and outline at a glance how Amazy.io fits into the strategy of Mirantis. So we can't be more excited right now to join the global team of Mirantis, a true open source champion. And you will hear later today why open source really is so important for us. But also to let me reiterate what Adrian already said, together really Amazy.io and Mirantis have now the possibility to really provide to all of you who are listening today or will listen in the upcoming days, to provide a true zero ops software delivery hub for modern applications. So before I'm now jumping into the specific use cases and the offerings we're currently able to provide, let me spend a couple of minutes to introduce Amazy.io. So who are we? Where are we coming from? So that you understand, okay, with whom you might deal in the future. And that sentence, which here is on the slides, which is very rich. So there are many, many words in there. So it says Amazy.io is a global team of open source and Kubernetes experts providing a zero ops application delivery hub for engineering teams to deploy applications more easily by developers and for developers. As I said, there's a lot of in there, so many words that in that complex sentence. So let me really break this down a little bit, piece by piece. And I would really like to start with the application delivery hub, because this is clearly something we have morphed into. So this is not something where we one day woke up and say, hey, this is the thing we need to do. So therefore, this is we got there. And let me explain a little bit the history, how we got there from the beginning. And therefore, I really need to go back almost 12 years. So I need to go back to the year 2010. 2010, in Switzerland, Amazy Labs, a web agency, was founded. Our current founder, our current CTO, Michael, from whom you will hear in a few minutes, was actually a web developer there. And the team at Amazy Labs really struggled to find good hosting services. So really from a developer perspective. So was always what was on the market didn't satisfy them. And so really that pain, that internal pain grew so big that they started to build their own platform. At the beginning, purely for internal purposes, but always with this very web developer-centric view and always with the developer as the main persona. They did this for a couple of years, and then in 2015, Michael and some teams really realized that hosting could actually be a real own business and pitched that idea to the Amaziah board. And it seems he was successful, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And in early 2017, Amaziah was founded as a Drupal-specific hosting company. Drupal is a PHP-based open source content management system which was widely used within the agency. And this is where everything started. So really from internal, we then also got appetite from external companies, and it really grew in popularity. And in 2017, the platform, which in the meanwhile was called Lagoon, was actually open sourced with full Kubernetes support. So while at the beginning it was mainly Drupal and WordPress driven, we saw also immense potential to deploy any technology or any framework via Lagoon, given the architecture, how we built it, and as I said, with full Kubernetes support. And this is fast forward, where now in 2020, actually, we ended up with an application delivery platform, which is truly open source and and supports a lot of frameworks out of the box. And if you compare it, what is out there in the market and what is really differentiating Lagoon from the rest, it is built with the developer in mind. We want to make the life of a developer as easy as possible. The platform puts the developer center stage and improves the productivity for developer. This is nowadays even more important. As you know, every business is becoming a digital business. So there will be a huge demand for developers. There will be basically a lack of talent. There will be a lack of developers in the foreseeable future. As an organization, you need to make sure to provide your talent, your developers, a tooling and a platform to ease their life, so that they can really focus on the core business of your organization. That's really focus what you are really good at and partner with organizations who actually support you to make your organization successful. So while you now heard where we are coming from, so during those 5 years, we really built a global team, so a global team of experts. And we built a team fully distributed by design. So it was really in our intention that we don't have an office. We don't want to have people come or commute to office. We really wanted to be fully remote, which allows us to really hire talent globally. As of today, we have 12 nationalities represented in 9 different countries, with speaking 6 different languages, and we are continuously to grow. The team is highly qualified and certified. Just recently, we actually became a Kubernetes certified service provider. So we did Kubernetes for a very long time, but now also being able and have that certification actually underlines the expertise our team is bringing to our customers. I mentioned already that open source was very important to us from the beginning on, and we really strongly believe in the power of the community, and therefore we are very active ourselves. And now we are really excited to team up with a true open source champion with Mirantis. And when we had the idea about Lagoon, and basically there was no question that this also needs to be open sourced. So Lagoon is available on GitHub under Apache license 2.0, and yeah, just go there, try it out yourself. Our team really provides the zero-ops services, so which Adrian was mentioning. We provide this to hundreds of customers globally, and world-known brands like the Australian government, Smartsheet, and Allianz are leveraging our services. Importantly, and I think this is also what Adrian already said, we don't run our own data centers. So we are born in the cloud, and we are very much collaborate and partner with the big hyperscalers and the large ISVs in the ecosystem. We truly believe in the power of an ecosystem, where everyone clearly brings its core capabilities. What is important to know, our ZeroOps application delivery platform is fully infrastructure agnostic. So no matter on which hyperscaler you're running, or if you're even running on-premise, you can use our platform. I hope this gave you an overview, at least in a nutshell, and I'm happy to engage with all of you in the future to learn about your organization, how we can help you. But let's switch gear now. So how can we support you on either your digital transformation journey or on your journey to the cloud in a full as-a-service model? We also believe as-a-service is the model of the future. And depending on your autonomy ambitions, so how much do you want to do yourself and your experience level, we have different use cases. Basically, we have 3 use cases. And let's start with the one which we call cloud. So if you're starting your cloud journey and you may have already identified a pilot project but aren't yet leveraging hyperscaler, we could easily onboard you on one of our own clusters. This requires really limited efforts on your side. Your project would run on one of our shared clusters in the public cloud. And currently we run on AWS and GCP, but could spin up a cluster easily on any other infrastructure as a service provider anywhere if needed. The pricing is also very simple. So you pay what you use. So based on the containers running, the traffic generated, and the Amazio success plan you are rolled in, that will actually be the combination of your monthly billing. Second, and this is really the one where a larger customer with more projects and applications are leveraging our services, is the so-called dedicated cloud offering. That's really a full end-to-end zero service where the clusters are running either in the public cloud or in the private cloud. Zero ops again really means we take care of the monitoring, the support, the maintenance, the security, the optimizations of your cluster. Your developers simply need to push the code. The rest will be covered by our team. How this works, Michael will explain in a minute. Also in this scenario, we support any infrastructure as a service provider. We have customers running on AWS, GCP, Azure, and even on-prem. Maybe some examples here at this point. So as an example, we're currently partnering with the Australian government within their program, which they call GovCMS. So we currently run 390 government website projects under our responsibility. So we manage those projects. It's our team who really make sure that they are up and they are available. And of course, this is following the highest security and data standards. And why do I bring that customer? Because that's the customer is really impressive in terms of traffic and load. During COVID-19, as this is a government customer, we had days with more than 150,000 concurrent users and more than 103 million hits a day without any significant downtime on our platform. So given the architectural nature of the platform, we were able to scale up and scale down given the traffic which was come from the customer. If there was an announcement done in the media that people need to check out a certain website, maybe the Department of Health, they went there. Another customer which is also leveraging this the setup of a dedicated cloud is a global huge pharma company. We currently run 650 projects for them, including a wide mix of technologies. So they use Drupal, they use Laravel, they use Node.js. We even operate clusters in Ireland and mainland China with them, so which adds an additional complexity of the setup. But also there, they fully rely on a partner providing them the zero ops approach. So it's really, they can focus on their core business, which is basically creating outstanding projects for the end customers and don't have to deal with the operational hustle and hurdle. What you also can hear, and based on those examples, is the power of our application delivery platform. So it really supports those many technologies and frameworks. And in the future, we will add additional ones to get even more feature rich. But it's one single platform you need and not multiple. So it's infrastructure agnostic. So you have the full flexibility. We basically follow your strategy. Is it on-prem? Is it one cloud? Is it even multi-cloud? It's your decision. And it's we will follow you, not only follow, but we will work closely with your team to also make those right decisions. And last but not least, for teams who have a lot of cloud, a lot of container, and a lot of Kubernetes experience already in-house, we also provide Lagoon as a service. So Lagoon as a service, it really allows to bridge the gap between the developers and the operational teams, where your internal ops team have already the capabilities. So your internal Kubernetes experts, they maintain the clusters, they run the clusters, they secure the clusters. It's even for the platform teams so that they have an industry-proven platform which they can offer to their developers. There's no internal ditching or gluing needed. Everything they need to do is really maintaining and run those clusters. And the Maze.io will run the so-called Lagoon core, which we make sure that it's up, it's maintained, it's secured, it's enhanced over the time. You will hear in exactly in a minute actually what Lagoon core is and how it works. With that, I hope I triggered some interest for our application delivery platform in this zero ops fashion, as no other technology actually makes it as simple to ship and run containerized applications. And with that, no further ado, I'm happy to introduce Michael Schmidt, the CTO and co-founder, who had that brilliant idea a couple of years back to actually explain the platform in more details and how you can use it on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Franz. Yes. So what I'm going to show you in the next couple of minutes is how our platform actually works, and also we're going to look a bit deeper into how Lagoon specifically works. So like Franz said, we do zero ops for you. So that means we're going to do all the deployments, we're going to do the releases, we handle the storage, we handle auto scaling, we monitor the clusters, we have teams that are on alerts, we provision the infrastructure, security, we do 24/7, we maintain, we have support teams, and we even can provide you a CDN and a WAF if your website needs one or your application needs one. So that's what we really understand the zero ops for application delivery. Now, of course, we do this for all kinds of different frameworks and technologies. While we're very focused on web applications today, as you can see here, we are planning to extend any application support, because we know from our customers that any applications out there that run on Kubernetes really need good deployment systems. And so we're going to add continuously more features and more support. And if you have one that is not on here right now, please reach out. Let us know which one you're interested in, because we really want to build the things together as an open source community, but of course also specifically for what the customers are needing. Now, so this is what we do. Let's actually look how we do it. As Franz mentioned, we can host on all kinds of infrastructure providers. As of today, we have clusters running in Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS, but also in mainland China. We can run on Alibaba Cloud, Yandex, on OpenStack, on your own on-premise infrastructure. It really doesn't matter, because what matters is that it's running Kubernetes. So, and if we say Kubernetes, we also mean actually any of the Kubernetes distributions. So we can run on Azure, AKS, Google GKE, AWS EKS. That's the three main hyperscalers, but we also have support for OpenShift. We have customers that use K3s or K0s for edge deployments, or just vanilla Kubernetes if you have that. So it's really, Lagoon has one requirement, it is a Kubernetes API, and that's it. And on top of that, that's where Lagoon comes in. So Lagoon is a microservice architecture. It's a system that receives and deploys applications. I'm going to show you shortly afterwards, but that's really, Lagoon sits on top of that Kubernetes. But that's not all. Lagoon has all kinds of integrations with other open source and also some proprietary tooling. One of them is monitoring and alerting. So that means Lagoon understands Prometheus and Grafana. It will be able to show metrics to the developers, the same also for logs. We're using Elasticsearch and OpenSearch to get data, the logs collected to display to the developers, because that's a super important thing. Developers not only need to deploy, they also need to see what's actually happening in their applications, and that's what we do through them. And then we have support for all kinds of Git hostings. You can host your Git repository anywhere. We can integrate in pretty much any CI/CD system that is out there. If it's a GitLab, a Travis, if you're Circle, GitHub Actions, or any other things, we can integrate in already existing CI/CD systems. We have support for application profiling toolings like New Relic, Blackfire, Datadog. So if you want to know what's actually running in your application, how is the application behaving, Lagoon can help you and connect you to that. And last but not least, specifically if you talk about the web, we talk about CDN and WAF solutions, and we have integrations with pretty much any CDN out there that you maybe already use, or as I mentioned, Amaze.io can also bring you one. So what we see here is really what we do on the left side and how exactly we do it. But now let's actually look at how does a developer deploy an application into this Kubernetes. And basically that's it. There is one main step. A developer just needs to push their code into their Git server that they already deploy into anyway, and nothing more. Lagoon will take it from there, and Lagoon will notify the developer when it's done. That's what we do. What we have a saying, reduce to the max, and that's really as max we could reduce it, is that we already work with the tools that the developers are using anyway, which is Git. They can push into their already existing Git server, so they don't need to push it anywhere else, and from there Lagoon starts doing. Now let's of course look a little bit deeper how this actually works, because while it's cool to know how simple it is, you maybe are a bit interested in what actually happens in the background when I push. So like I said, the developer pushes their code into any Git repository. That Git repository is then configured to send a webhook to Lagoon to tell Lagoon, hey, there's a new push, there's a new pull request, there's a new branch created. Lagoon has then two parts. There's a Lagoon core and there's a Lagoon remote. The webhook is received by the Lagoon core, and it will then decide to which Lagoon remote it has to talk to. So that means Lagoon actually can deploy to unlimited amounts of Kubernetes clusters, where each of these Kubernetes clusters has a Lagoon remote in it. And Lagoon core knows which project needs to be deployed to which Kubernetes cluster. You can even separate by production and development environments. You could deploy into two Kubernetes clusters if you, let's say, want to have multi-cluster deployments. All of that is possible. The Lagoon core is the central part that connects to all these Lagoon remotes. So in this case, in this example, the Lagoon core decided to deploy to the Kubernetes cluster 1, and it will send the Lagoon remote a message saying, hey, there's a new deployment for you, please start this. This Lagoon remote will then start a so-called Lagoon build pod. This pod will get all the information that is necessary, and it will do the actual build and deployment. And that exists of multiple steps. The first thing is it will clone the Git repository from the Git server. You can actually see that the Git repository is not accessed by Lagoon core. So you can actually run this all in air-gapped systems. This Lagoon build pod will then analyze the code. It will look for a couple of YAML files. So they're super, super simple that just simply tell Lagoon what type of applications this is. Lagoon will then build all the different container images for you. It will also security scan them if you want that. And it will then talk to Kubernetes to actually create all the different objects that are required. So it will create the deployments, the services, the secrets, the ingress. It will create storage, network policies, auto scaling. Everything that is necessary for that specific application is automatically created by Lagoon. We're actually using Helm there, so that's another open source CNCF project that shows that we actually don't try to re-implement everything. We're using as many other tools that are already there. Lagoon will then also monitor the rollout of all these different objects and specifically, of course, the containers. And one special thing, it will then also run the deployment tasks that are necessary, because a lot of the applications out there, it's not enough to just create the containers or the pods. You actually need to run existing tasks, and that's what Lagoon automatically does for you as well. And then when all of this is done, the Lagoon remote tells the Lagoon core about the deployment status, and the Lagoon core will then inform the developer about that status as well. And there's a lot of different ways how these notifications can happen. There's a UI, we have an API, we have chat integration. So you ultimately see it like in a chat window. We can send out webhooks, emails, all kind of different things that whatever the developer would like to be informed. And that's the whole workflow. But still, if we go back to what we saw before, all the developer needs to do is to push. And that's one of the main important things about Lagoon. The developer does not need direct access to the Kubernetes anymore, or even any Kubernetes knowledge. So any of these objects, the building, all of the complexity that that Kubernetes has is completely abstracted by Lagoon. All the developer needs to do is push their code, and that's it. So let's look at a short overview of what else Lagoon also has. Like we talked about, the only requirement is a Kubernetes cluster. It basically needs a Kubernetes API wherever this runs. Lagoon also has a very high security focus. As Franz mentioned, we have governments, big enterprises, and of course they all require very high security. For example, that means that by default, Lagoon only deploys containers that are not running as root. So the possibility that something happens is way lower. Lagoon also creates network policies to segment the different projects from each other. We have full role-based access control and group support in Lagoon. So you can, for example, say that specific developers don't have access to the production environment and things like that. By default, Lagoon automatically creates backups and restores out of the box. You don't have to do anything. Everything is backed up, and you can actually define the schedule and for how long you want to keep them. And it's even possible to deploy this air-gapped. That means the Kubernetes clusters that Lagoon deploys into do not need to be reachable from the internet in any way. Actually, it's the Lagoon remote that makes the connection back to the core. And so with that, we can ensure that, that you can also run this in very high security environments. Like I mentioned, Lagoon has full multi-tenancy support. That means you can not only run multiple projects with multiple different groups and customers, and you can actually connect a lot of different Kubernetes clusters to one single Lagoon core. We have full support for observability with Prometheus and Grafana. We also have log integration, and we also support SBOMs, so bill of materials for software. So Lagoon will automatically tell you what is actually deployed into these containers. So if you hear that one specific package, let's say log4j, we all remember that one, has a vulnerability, you could actually go to Lagoon and it will tell you which projects are affected by that. Lagoon is completely API first. It has a GraphQL API so that you can interact directly, or we also have the Lagoon CLI, which you can use for scripting. We have also the Lagoon UI, which can also be used by non-developers. So because not in specifically applications, sometimes you also want your project managers, maybe your stakeholders to know what's going on, or maybe run something specific. And that's possible with Lagoon via the UI. So people don't need to have Git installed or anything at all to actually interact with the project. And like Franz already said, all of this is completely open source. We publish everything under the Apache 2.0 license, and it's deployed on GitHub directly. That's the actual version that we run ourselves because we really believe that in order to truly be able to support all applications out there, it needs to be open source so that everybody can contribute how all of these specific applications are working. So with that, that you know a bit more how Lagoon works, I'm handing over to Sergey.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I want to talk about Emazio and Mirantis. And as Adrian mentioned at the beginning, our purpose is to help customers to create extraordinary products and services. And Emazio significantly extends Mirantis' portfolio and allows us to double down on our zeroops as a service story. And together, it allows us to be even more effective in freeing application developers and operators from the infrastructure burden and essentially abstracting away the infrastructure and saving their time to create most valuable code and be more successful overall. First of all, I want to highlight that Lagoon is immediately available to all Mirantis customers because it only requires Kubernetes to run under the hood. And there are basically two ways to consume it. With the Lagoon as a service, it's essentially about just adding the Lagoon remote to the Kubernetes cluster to be able to deploy into it while using the Lagoon core as a SaaS. And the other way is obviously possible by using the open source version of Lagoon and just self-host it to try and use it. And we have hundreds of customers running Kubernetes today, and by the nature of the enterprise business, many of them run web applications. So Lagoon is immediately usable for them and can provide the benefits. Together with our Kubernetes offerings, it basically provides the easiest way for developers to take advantage of the infrastructure without having cloud and Kubernetes experts per se. And as Michael mentioned, that's one of the biggest challenges for onboarding applications to Kubernetes is to basically become a Kubernetes expert, and Lagoon makes a great job abstracting this away from developers. As for the wider story for the Mirantis, the Amazy pairs perfectly with our managed offerings with Opscare and Opscare Plus, where we've taken care of infrastructure, and together with Amazy, it provides an extra step of abstracting infrastructure from the application developers and the creators. And this is a complete stack that allows to cover everything starting from the hardware management, operating system, running Kubernetes cluster, and then having full application delivery stack with Amazy. Speaking about the roadmap and the further integration with the Mirantis products, we obviously plan for the tighter integration between the Amazy and Lagoon specifically, and all of Mirantis products, and specifically that's about provisioning Lagoon remote out of the box with our products, so it minimizes the entry point, and like overall theme of these integrations is to provide really the self-service experience and ease of use for our whole platform. So there are other integrations that we foresee, such as supporting Mirantis secure registry in Amazy, and integrating with the Lens and other tools that we have. So I think that's a brief overview of a direction, like how they will integrate our platforms. And I think here back to John for the Q&A section.
Thank you so much, everybody. That was really, really interesting. We do have some questions. If you folks would not mind, I'm going to ask them more or less in the order in which they came in. The first one is particularly interesting to me because Lagoon momentarily reminded me the first time I heard about it of a PaaS, a platform of as a service solution, but it really isn't. Could Michael maybe clarify how it's different from a PaaS, which is typically opinionated, heavily abstracted, kind of packaged up?
Yeah. Overall, I would say Lagoon tries to solve a similar thing that if you would describe a regular PaaS, meaning that you as a developer don't need to worry about the underlying infrastructure. All you really build is your application and you deploy it. But like you mentioned, platform as a services usually are very restrictive of what you can do. You maybe have one specific language you can use. So let's say you maybe have one specific Golang version you can use. You maybe have limits on additional modules you can install and things like that. And that's where Lagoon, leveraging containers, can provide way more flexibility. Because Lagoon allows you to build your own containers locally, to define them, to test them, and then Lagoon will build the exact same containers and run them. So if you need a specific version of a language, a programming language, or an additional package, you can bring them within the container specification in the Docker file, and you can deploy them for your specific needs. And that obviously goes way further than if you compare this to a normal platform as a service, where you just have a couple of, maybe you have a drop down that you can say which version you want. And that's what we really believe that the whole DevOps movement is about, that developers should have the possibility to define themselves what they want to run and give them the possibility to change it also, but also to test it locally first, like with the fact that you can run the same container engine locally first to test all these things. So that goes way beyond the PaaS, but in the end, Lagoon solves the same problems for developers to deploy super simple without needing to first set up servers somewhere and things like that.
This makes huge sense to me. In fact, there's a related question that came in a little while after that one. Lagoon accommodates what people call decoupled technology, right? Where front end, back end languages are different, or there are other,
Yes.
diversities in the technology stacks and systems that people are obliged to use or choose to use to create a solution.
Yeah, fun fact, actually, the whole reason, if you go all the way back when I started the idea of Lagoon, it is actually the reason that we had customers that wanted to run different programming languages at the same time to run their websites. Maybe to look a bit deeper into the decoupled, what it means. In the past, websites were built by one programming language. So you had Python or PHP or Django or other things. And this did the back end, but also the front end. But now with modern technologies, specifically with React, that was pushed by Facebook and today used by everybody, and we have other tools, because the browser can now run JavaScript very, very fast. The web changed into decoupled, meaning that the front end is actually built by, let's say, JavaScript, where the back end is used by some other programming language. Could be C#, .NET, PHP, anything else, but a lot of time. But this means the hosting infrastructure now needs to run two different languages. And that's where we ran into problems. And that was one of the reasons that we started to using containers, exactly because it allows you to tell the infrastructure, here's a container that needs Node.js, and here's a container that needs PHP. And that was funny enough, that was actually the first thing. And when we did this, we realized that we're now not limited anymore, because suddenly we broke out of this just everything in one, and we realized, okay, now we can host any application. And that was really the beginning of Lagoon, and also the whole move to application delivery, because we now have a solution that does not restrict the developers anymore into a golden cage of only running one thing. So yes, Lagoon and Amaze.io have full support for decoupled and for any other architecture you might want to build.
This is extremely attractive. I guess this is also part of what makes me so happy that all of this is open source, which seems like the only way to organize this in an agile way. Someone asks, where can people view the source code? I am going to show a slide at the end. In fact, we can show it now, where you can reach Amaze.io's website and the Lagoon website, which has links directly to the GitHub repo and other stuff. So if you visit either of those URIs, you will find what you're looking for. In the couple of minutes that we have left, maybe Sergey or others, I know that you folks have been talking actively with a group at Mirantis that builds Lens. What are your thoughts about how Lagoon and Lens will interoperate going forward? Or is it too early to say?
Sergey, you want to take that, or do you want me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so we are super excited. We're already starting to talk with the Lens team. We can't say how exactly and what's going to be the first part that the integration is going to look like, but we definitely know that it's going to integrate with it. And in the end, we really believe that Lens, that today is like the central tool that Kubernetes or that ops people use for Kubernetes management, we also think that it could also become a central tool for developers to deploy their applications into the same Kubernetes clusters to monitor them. Because in the end, and again, that's what the whole DevOps movement is about, is the less barrier between developers and ops, the better. We believe in that. And of course, using the same tool where we literally look at the same data at the same time is only going to make all of this better. So we can imagine that in the future, you can, for example, create new projects and you can trigger deployments and you can see how your application's doing directly from the Lens interface. So you don't even need the CLI anymore and things like that. This will take some time, but it's definitely something we're going to work on and we're going to see over the next weeks, months, what we can do there, but it's going to happen.
It sounds very exciting. I just finished doing a little preliminary research on how much time people are saving with Lens, and it looks like in some very common Kate's developer workflows, a day a week is not an unusual time savings. So we really are talking about something that, here and there is having a big impact on people, and just making that thing more useful and, putting more stuff in it seems, like a smart thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could you maybe speak more about specific Lagoon use cases? I mean, you talked a little bit about web stuff going forward. What else can people expect to see, holistically supported?
Yeah, we want to make Lagoon the standard to deploy any application into Kubernetes clusters. So that means if you have any application that needs to be deployed, instead of trying to figure out how do I deploy this, which Kubernetes YAMLs do I need to create, what are best practices for that, things like that, that you basically go to Lagoon, you select the application type that is already there. It might ask you 1 or 2 questions about the specific needs, and off you go and you deploy it. And it's not only just deployed, but it's also deployed with the best practices from the community. That's why we really need this community. There's hundreds of thousands different applications out there, and each of them have a little bit special quirks on how they need to run in Kubernetes, and no company, no team can know all of them. But with the power of open source and the power of Git sharing, we can create a hub that really creates these best practices, so that if you realize that your application needs one specific thing in Kubernetes, you can contribute that back, and the next person that wants to deploy the same application already profits from that. I think that's really the power of the open source community, that we can share knowledge to each other, and in the end make it all better for all of us. And that's what is already happening with Lagoon today, specifically if we talk like web and even more specific into Node.js and PHP, where we have a lot of customers using Lagoon and constantly sharing and improving it. And we believe we will be able to extend this to any applications out there. And that's what we're going to work on. So that's what you can expect from Lagoon. Follow us. You can either follow us on Lagoon directly or also on Amazee.io. And you will see more and more support for more and more frameworks, languages, applications that we're going to release, that it makes anybody out there that deploys and has to deploy into Kubernetes that they can leverage Lagoon.
All right, and I think with that, thank you, Michael. We will close. Thank you so much to all of our speakers today. A reminder to attendees, a recording of this webinar will be delivered to your email in the next couple of days as soon as we get it edited up. And visit Amazee.io and Lagoon.sh for more information about Lagoon. Thank you all for joining us today.